Hello, everybody. My name is Alexander. Today, I'd like to take you through an idea that I've been working on. I'm calling programmatic NFTs. Um, Recently, I was able to be on Cardano with Paul and give a kind of complete version of this presentation, but it's rather long, so I thought I'd break it into smaller chunks and make it a little bit more digestible. So let's get into it. Like I said, the idea is about a kind of new way, I think, of recording or playing with art on a blockchain. And so the main idea is to explore the medium of the blockchain as an actual art form and not just as a container for art. So to give some context, I'm actually formally trained as an architect. I have 2 graduate degrees from University of Michigan in architecture, and this is a building that we kind of study in our architectural journey. It's from 1906, and on first glance, it looks kind of like a classical building, right? But if you look more closely, compared to the buildings on the left and the right of it, at the very edges of the photo, you can see that this is a little bit more rigid and orthogonal, rectangular, has all these rivets on the facade, and especially once you go inside, you can see this is not really a classical building at all. And what we kind of are taught when we study this kind of thing is that the idea of material honesty, or that materials have some kind of natural expression which is conducive to their properties, and how do you express that architecturally. And so in 1906, what was happening is kind of like beginning of the industrial era. All these new things are coming online, and so they really express the kind of mechanical, fastening nature of these rivets, and allows for a very different kind of space to be created with this kind of airy open spans than traditional load-bearing masonry stone construction, right? If we continue to go forward, this is 22 years later, Mies van der Rohe. This looks like it could be anywhere today, because it's such a kind of timeless, kind of nicely developed style. But just to show you how these kind of materials evolved in a span of 20 years. So why are we talking about architecture when we're talking about NFTs and art on a blockchain? Well, I think we're at a similar moment to that 1906 building right now, where, not to throw shade or anything, but for me, there's this kind of weird position we're in at, where we're just kind of starting to play with the idea of art on a blockchain. And one thing that's a little bit disappointing to me right now is this lack of reflexivity in the work, or again, treating blockchain just as like a Dropbox or a Google Drive, just as a place to dump JPEGs on. And so what I'm kind of advocating for in this project, and I think other people will take forward, I hope will take forward and do it better than I have been able to do it, is that this is actually a medium, and it should be explored on its own, the same way that, even within painting, oil painting is a different medium than watercolor, and there's different techniques and methods that you can use and exploit to produce an affect that you're trying to go for. So when I was discussing this with one of the people in the community, actually, this is from Fuck You Pay Me, cool stake pool on the Cardano blockchain that recently started out. And they're 2 Canadian guys who have, I believe, art degrees. They mentioned Saul LeWitt, who's a painter who I'd kind of just walked by before, maybe, and not really known, well, this looks like modern art to me. But what they kind of explained, and I really appreciate, is this idea that Saul is actually not usually the one executing these paintings, but writing down on a set of instruction cards the technique or the way for producing the artwork. And that's really interesting to me, because it kind of cleaves the concept and the idea of the art from the execution, and kind of separates it. And where is somewhere that sounds familiar to me? One is architectural practice, where we make a blueprint and someone else executes our buildings, right? On the first day of architecture school, they kind of tease us, like, you're probably here because your mom wanted you to build her a house. But I'm going to tell you something: you will never build anything. Architects do not build buildings. We design buildings, and other people build them. And also, like programming, right? This idea that you write code, but it's executed in some kind of environment. And so, just to get explicit, this is a kind of a piece where we're seeing that people are actually selling the instructions for producing the artwork that was installed in some gallery in what is this, the Upper West Side of New York. So even more interesting is, if you see in this upper left-hand corner, 1 through 16, I would almost call this a dictionary in programming speak, where we have a key, which is the numbers 1 through 16, and a value, which is this line segment drawing of different arcs, straight lines, squiggly lines, or dashed lines. And then he's basically kind of arrayed these around or superimposed these around the gallery wall, saying that put number 1 and number 2 on top of each other. Over here, we jump over the upper right-hand side, put 5 and 15 on top of each other, right? And that produces this kind of collection of drawings that we see here over on the right. And if we want to see this actually installed, this is kind of a fun collapse. This is a Mies van der Rohe museum. I think it's the National Museum in Germany. You can tell by the Mies van der Rohe loungers, fancy Barcelona furniture from the building we saw earlier. This is kind of how it's installed. We can see this is in, I believe, a gallery in Connecticut in somewhere in the 90s or early 2000s. You get some interesting coincidences, like things that come together at a certain point, or even this complete circle over here. And lastly, this looks like the MoMA to me in New York, but again, different arc segments here, not quadrants, but different kind of ways of laying them down and how they're arranged in this specific space. But kind of very interesting exploration of instructions versus execution. And lastly, this was a kind of very nice piece that I kind of fell in love with, which is this band of color in 4 directions in all combinations. And you see this black horizontal line, yellow vertical line, red diagonal, and blue diagonal line. And then you see the various combinations of 2 of them at a time, 3 of them at a time, 4 of them at a time, and the price it's going for, right, at this gallery. But there's this idea that I really like of kind of setting up a set of rules for searching over and then just executing on it and seeing what comes out of that. And I think in a future video, when we go over what actually unsigned algorithms are, this will kind of become self-evident of how this kind of thinking could influence the collection. So thank you for listening, and I hope that was useful. Follow along on Twitter or in our Discord channel. It's getting pretty active and fun. I'm surprised how much reception there has been in the community to this idea, and I'm really excited to see where we can take it. So thank you for listening. Have a good day. Bye-bye.